So you may or may not realize this, but we're only a few weeks away from getting our first official glimpse at what the MCU has planned for Avengers Doomsday, when we get a trailer for it tossed in front of Avatar, Fire and whatever. And more specifically, it's more than likely we'll also be getting our first real glimpse at what the hell exactly they've got planned with their seemingly random-ass casting of Robert Downey Jr. as the film's antagonist, Dr. Doom. However, you go anywhere online, there are whole scores of both comic and movie nerds who were immediately apprehensive about this casting, and what it is that they even have planned for this beloved and iconic villain. We haven't exactly gotten phenomenal versions of Dr. Doom on screen. Another botched version would be a huge shame for one of Marvel's greatest friggin' villains. And there's a lot of evidence that despite the hundreds of millions that they've already poured into this movie, that when Doomsday comes and we finally see this guy on screen, disappointment is exactly what we're all gonna get. So to prepare for that possibility, I've compiled 4 of the biggest red flags I can see that RDJ's Doom may be, doomed to failure. With red flag number 1 being casted for marketing, not for the character. Robert Downey Jr. is a great actor. The casting of him as Iron Man is one of the greatest decisions in the entire MCU. And without him, it would not have come even close to reaching the levels of popularity and success that it has. Like Christopher Reeves with Superman, Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka, or Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter, sometimes you just find the one perfect actor to portray this version of the character on film, and it can lead to immense levels of success for the character and the movie, regardless of how similar or different to the source material that they are. You can say whatever you want, but Robert Downey Jr. is 110% one of those kinds of castings. And him in the role of Tony Stark was one of the reasons people kept coming out to the theater movie after movie from the beginning to the end of the Infinity Saga. And the people in charge knew it. That's why Tony was basically positioned as the main character of the MCU, and alongside Cap, his story arc forms the backbone of the greater story of this universe, all leading to his epic self-sacrifice to save all life in the universe in Endgame, really making it feel to many like this was the end of the story of the entire MCU. So after no longer having Tony to carry on the franchise, the best choice they could have made was to position another popular character like Thor or Doctor Strange into the role of, quote, main character. But they turned Thor into a comedy character and Doctor Strange into like the third main character of his own movie. Instead, for some reason, expecting that audiences were going to be as interested in stories revolving around Kamala Khan or Sam Wilson as their focal points. And we all see how well those choices paid off. So, much less people bothered watching any of the Phase 4 or 5 movies. None of the characters have really been a standout hit, so the gimmick of crossing them all together in an upcoming Avengers movie isn't going to be a huge draw anymore. It seemed apparent that they needed to do something drastic, or their next Avengers film was going to be a box office disaster. So whether it was pitched by someone inside of the company or they hired some marketing firm to assist them, someone came up with the idea on how to create buzz for this movie out of absolutely nothing. And we soon after got the reveal at Comic-Con that the villain of the next Avengers would be Dr. Doom, and he'd be played by none other than Robert Downey Jr. With both comic and movie fans on average being immediately confused and apprehensive about what the hell this would mean for both the movie and the character of Doom. And some will tell you that this was the wrong choice, but they're in fact the ones who are wrong. That reveal was not to assure fans that the character of Doom was going to be portrayed well. That reveal had a very specific purpose, to get enough people talking about it, whether for good or bad, to let regular folks know that there even is an Avengers movie coming out. And not only that, but Robert Downey Jr. is involved as a big deal character from Marvel, who specifically is not him returning as Iron Man. So in that regard, this reveal was a complete success. It was just weird, confusing, and worrying enough that it got most nerds talking. I'm worried about it, so I'm talking about it with you right now, who is likely also somewhat apprehensive about it. Because of that, other people will be pushed this and similar videos online, and every day more people learn that this movie is even being planned. So, in this whole scenario, Dr. Doom, the greatest Marvel villain of all time, doesn't actually matter. He's just one little cog in a giant marketing campaign. The only reason he's involved here is because nerds like myself love the guy and will care how he's used or abused. So they didn't pick Doom because they were so interested in bringing him to life in the MCU. And we all know they didn't scour the world looking for the best actor to play him. Robert Downey Jr. was casted for no other reason but marketing purposes, which really sucks for Dr. Doom fans when there are so many other actors out there who would have killed it in the role. But, like I said, Robert Downey Jr. is a great actor. I'm sure he'll do a great job and deliver an epic performance as Doom. if he's even actually playing him, as there's a lot of fan speculation that there's more than meets the eye with this casting. And the more I think about the various paths that they could be taking with this character, the more I start to see even more problems, leading me to my next red flag. Whether he's Doom or not, no path forward really works that well. So there's a lot of fan speculation about what they're planning. And though the Russos have claimed that Robert Downey Jr. was the best actor to portray Victor Von Doom, and all is as it seems, a lot of us call BS. All of the Russos' MCU movies are built upon building up and then subverting your expectations. Whether it's setting up one villain only to reveal it's another in the Cap movies, to killing fan favorite Loki off at the very beginning of Infinity War, and then ending the movie with the villain winning. They understand that keeping the audience guessing and on the edge of their seat about what's going to happen is key to an exciting superhero movie. But let's say this is exactly as it seems, and we're just getting a movie about Dr. Doom of Earth 828 attacking the MCU and some kind of plot about the multiverse. Well, the simple fact is that the majority of audiences are not going to see a new villain up there on the screen. They're going to see Iron Man's actor dressed in a new villain's outfit. This is Tony frickin' Stark, the most iconic and recognizable character in the entire MCU. And Robert Downey Jr. is one of the most famous and recognizable celebrities in the entire world. You can't just toss him in a new role and expect people to forget about all that. I've heard people say that it could work because Dr. Doom wears a mask, and as long as he doesn't take it off, it should be all good, right? But I totally disagree. Though we don't see Doom's face beneath the mask most of the time in comics, one of the most powerful image comics use of him from the very start is the extreme close-up where we see his piercing eyes peering out from beneath his mask. They'll definitely do this in the movie as well, as it's too cool of a shot to just pass up. Everyone's going to immediately recognize that it's Robert Downey Jr. His eyes are one of his most distinct features, and the second we see that it's him under there, two things happen. Our suspension of disbelief is just gone. No matter how much you try not to, a small part of your brain will know that's Iron Man's face beneath that armor. And that same part of your brain will know that the only reason he's even here was to get his name on the marquee, to sell more tickets to a movie starring a bunch of C-list MCU characters and random cameos, taking you out of the movie. And I expect the people making this movie already know that. What's the point of keeping Robert Downey Jr.'s face covered when everyone will be thinking of it anyways when they look at that mask and hear his voice? And with them having paid him like $100 million to return to the MCU, I doubt all they're hoping to get is a glorified voice acting role for that money, which is why I feel incredibly confident that we're going to be seeing his face under the mask. And if they do choose to show Victor Von Doom's face under there, we've got two options. And besides the fact that Doom shouldn't be showing his face in the first place, they both kind of suck anyways. Option one is that Doom just coincidentally looks like Iron Man because it's a multiverse, so why the hell not? We get a dramatic moment where his face is knocked off and we see either a scarred or non-scarred Tony Stark, and the other characters in the MCU are momentarily shocked. It gets explained with some kind of pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo about something about timelines or universes overlapping. It causes people to look similar or different from each other despite being different people, and yada, 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 yada. Or that it reveals that even in our universe, Tony Stark or Von Doom were adopted at birth in one universe or secretly had a twin who was adopted, and so they're the same kind of character, but they're also the different character in another universe. The second you have to devote screen time to explaining this kind of meta casting BS, you're going to lose half the audience because it gets so convoluted and confusing so quickly. And you're going to lose the other half of the audience who can follow it because in the end, it's just so stupid and obvious how this is all to explain something outside of the movie. And it just annoys the crap out of people. Now, you can get away with this kind of stuff when you grab up characters from decades of stories across multiple continuities and have one actor who happened to play multiple characters, such as Brandon Routh playing both Superman and the Atom, and then having them meet up in the CW Crisis on Infinite Earths. But that's because it was all organic. The audience knew this going in, and it's just an interesting quirk that they look the same. You lampshade it, and you move on with the story. With Robert Downey Jr., the audience knows this was not organic. It was reverse engineered. So any time spent explaining is going to sound like a cheap excuse and just annoy the crap out of people who really loved Tony or really loved Doom, and want them to be two completely separate characters. Out of universe, everyone will see it as a shameless attempt to get Robert Downey Jr. into the movie. And in universe, there's no real satisfying way to explain it. I don't want another BS Batman using noodles to explain why somehow changing the past in one of universe got the Tim Burton Batman to suddenly replace Ben Affleck's. It's stupid. The audience knew it was just a cheap attempt at nostalgia, and so that's why they did not turn up for that friggin' movie. The other option for showing his face is just as bad, and that would be if he is Victor Von Doom, but he's changed his appearance either through Franklin or some other way to look exactly like Tony Stark, in some kind of plan to manipulate the heroes of the MCU for whatever his plans are. I don't think anyone, though, wants to watch Doom weaken at Bernie's Tony Stark's dead friggin' body. It's disrespectful, and like the previous version, it's so transparently just a way to get the actor into the movie. But I don't think that second option is all that likely. What I and many others do think is likely is that this actually isn't Dr. Doom. It's an evil Tony Stark from an alternate universe. One who either had a different upbringing, so started down a much darker path after escaping the cave, or one who failed while trying to save the world and was driven to become a darker version of himself to try and save it. Take the "I imagine a suit of armor around the world" line and push it to its furthest extreme, with him either creating the Doom armor due to injuries he'd received or to hide the shame of who he's become from the world, or that he stole the armor from the Doctor Doom of his own world when he killed him or some crap. Any number of scenarios where this is a Tony Stark who became the Doctor Doom of his alternate world. And he's destroying the multiverse in order to undo the damage he's done to his own world or to try to force his dystopian vision of peace on other universes. This is the one I think regular audiences would probably find the most interesting, since they know Tony Stark and don't know shit about Doctor Doom. But it's the one that's gonna piss off comic fans to no end, because it'll mean we were straight up lied to and aren't getting a Doctor Doom at all. And this whole thing was another friggin' bait and switch. It would be the MCU Taskmaster times a million. It's likely the best path for the story, but it'd be such a frickin' waste of such a great character. The other major path they could go down, and the one I've suspected from the start personally, is that this is all a big red herring. And we'll see a bunch of alternate universe versions of Doctor Doom early in the movie working together, with one who's a variant of Tony Stark among them. And early into the movie, either the main Doom of Earth 828 or the Beyonder will slaughter all of them and reveal himself as the true threat of the movie that everyone will have to face and really set the stakes. And that the only reason they even advertised Robert Downey Jr. playing Doom was so that they could hide the fact that he had a major role in the movie returning as Iron Man, because they knew people would love to see Iron Man return, but if they actually announced it, people will see it as cheap and will be reluctant to go and see it, out of worry for the current MCU ruining their favorite character. This would suck because it would mean that we were all straight up lied to. And though comic fans may like getting a real Doom, the regular folks who went to see this movie for an evil Tony Stark would be annoyed at getting the same kind of gaslighting to be tricked into seeing something that they aren't interested in, as us comic folks are all too used to at this point. And there's one last major way that this could be going. That this isn't Doom or a multiversal Tony. It's our Tony, somehow revived after using the Infinity Gauntlet and either driven insane by its power or having seen something beyond death that caused him to need to destroy the multiverse or some crap. With this idea being so obviously bad, it could retroactively destroy the entire MCU. Though, you never know with these people, so, yeah. Any of these directions with the character and casting is going to be a bummer to a large portion of the audience. But no matter which way they go, it seems like we're not going to be just straight up getting the Doctor Doom who's been so popular for decades in the comics, leading me to my next red flag. Doctor Doom is a Fantastic Four villain first and foremost. Yeah, Doom is one of the major villains of the Marvel Universe, with him either centering in or taking a huge role in some of Marvel's most well-known events. If you want to do a movie with Doom as the main villain, there's a lot to work with. He's an incredibly interesting and powerful threat that has been portrayed having plans and ambitions that can threaten even the most powerful entities in the Marvel Universe. But everything that makes the character who he is came straight from the pages of Fantastic Four. Why is Doom so intelligent and powerful? Because he needed to be smart enough to challenge Reed Richards and strong enough to fight the combined might of the entire Fantastic Four. Why is he a master of science and magic? Because that makes him a master of something Reed's not familiar with, again making him a bigger threat. Why is he so narcissistic and egomaniacal? Because this gives him motivation to become completely obsessed with Reed Richards and try to best the team over and over to prove himself their superior. Why is he hideously scarred? It comes right out of his backstory with Reed, and is one of the main motivations for wanting to get his perceived revenge against him. The list goes on and on and on. Everything about the guy comes straight from the pages of Fantastic Four, for very specific reasons to that team and corner of the Marvel Universe. Though he's fought many heroes and threatened all of existence many times, he is and always will be a Fantastic Four villain first and foremost. Sure, he looks cool and is super dangerous, but his relationship and connection to Reed Richards and the rest of the FF is exactly what makes him so interesting. Just skipping over all of that when building this new version of the character in the MCU is going to make him lose so much of the development of who he is as a character, as well as why many readers responded to him so well way back in the day. Think of it this way. One of the MCU villains who was the most well-developed and able to emulate his level of importance in the comics was Loki. We saw him as the brother and villain of Thor, who betrayed all of Asgard in an egotistical grab for power. When he returns as the main villain in Avengers, it's awesome because we already know who he is very well. Same goes for Hydra across all of their appearances in the MCU after being developed in the first Captain America. With Doom, we will not get any of that. His first full appearance will be in the next Avengers, with none of the build-up Loki got. And the Fantastic Four won't get any of the gravitas Thor got when he arrived in Avengers to deal with Loki, because this will be the first time we see them fight against Doom as well. With some villains, this can work, because it's how they were designed to appear in the comics. Ultron got plenty of time to be developed in Age of Ultron without taking screen time away from the heroes. But that's because Ultron's origin, motivation, and arc are all tied to the Avengers in the comics. He's created by an Avenger, goes crazy, and tries to destroy the world. Though all of the details are completely different between the comic and the movie, that is the basic story. He was created in comics to be a villain for the Avengers to face specifically. The same goes for Thanos. In the comics, Thanos was introduced as already being an incredibly powerful galactic tyrant with his own motivations separate from the heroes of the Earth, as he was in the first Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. And in both movies and comics, over time you get to see just how dangerous and powerful he is as a threat, existing beyond any specific hero. And though his motivations and characterization are completely different, his place in the universe as a major villain trying to impose his own will on all of reality is conveyed to the audience in a way that makes him incredibly iconic and memorable as a villain in both the comics and the movies. Great villains are defined by the heroes that they fight. The Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus are two of Marvel's greatest villains of all time as well, and have challenged the Avengers and the entire Marvel Universe multiple times. But you wouldn't choose either of them to first appear as the main villain of an Avengers movie. Magneto has faced the whole world and the Avengers on multiple occasions, but you wouldn't make his first appearance be in an Avengers movie either. You need to explore them and their relationships to Spider-Man or the X-Men first, for the audience to see how interesting and awesome they are, before you take them out of their element and have them fight other heroes. And we've already seen a version of how this will look like on film with Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is defined by Superman. He can be a major threat to the entire DC universe and has been many times, but at the end of the day, he is still obsessed with and defined by his relationship to Superman. We need to learn about him through that context first before we can explore his status as one of the most dangerous villains in the world. And though it seems like Lex is going to be a major part of the DCU going forward, they took the time to define and develop him as the antithesis of Superman first. So when he returns, we'll know his deal and like him or hate him already. Meanwhile, years earlier in the DCEU, they didn't take the time to do that. And they just introduced Lex Luthor as basically a Justice League level threat who was manipulating both Batman and Superman to kill each other in his first appearance. Then created a Doomsday that both they and Wonder Woman had to unite to fight. And next time we see him, he's already contacting Deathstroke and planning to put together a Legion of Doom. People will tell you that this Lex didn't work because he was so different from the comics. But as I already pointed out, Thanos was nothing like the comics and he still worked. This Lex didn't work because he was never defined. We don't know his deal in a simple hero and villain kind of way. We know he doesn't like Superman, but he's not defined by his hatred of him. He was more hateful of the idea of authority in general and the concept of deities as a whole. He was just a super crazy guy who happened to be fighting against Superman and other heroes. And both comic and movie fans did not respond to him all that well because of it. Lex and Doom are very similar in a lot of ways. Both are genius supervillains who see themselves as the saviors of their world, yet obsessively and pointlessly devote the vast majority of their capabilities and resources towards petty plans to destroy their perceived arch-nemeses. That petty obsession is part of what makes it so awesome when you see villains like that momentarily rise above it and see that when they put their minds to it, they can be a universe-level threat. It's always awesome to see that, but when you start with them as that level of villain, you lose a lot of that coolness, as you would have with Loki if his first appearance was in Avengers 1 and Thor had fought Mangog or something as the villain of his first solo movie. With no real mention of Loki, you wouldn't know his somewhat humble beginnings, and it just wouldn't have the same feeling at all. He'd just be some random villain. It is possible to at least establish Doom's character and relationship to the Fantastic Four at the beginning of the movie if the writing is really, really good. But how much friggin' time out of that movie would it have to take? Leading me to my last red flag. Doom will inevitably have to take over the entire movie. Thanos was a main character in Infinity War, but that worked because like all the other heroes in the movie, we already knew enough about him before the movie even started. We knew he was a powerful threat throughout the galaxy who was the real power behind many of the villains and plots of these movies. His relationship with Gamora and Nebula was already established. We knew he was searching for the Infinity Stones, and we knew where pretty much all of them were located. And we'd seen that his forces were intercepting Thor all before Infinity War even started. All they needed to devote screen time to was showing us that he was a physically powerful threat as he beat Hulk, and explaining what his deeper motivations were for getting the stones. So he folded in with all the other characters well and did not steal away screen time from anyone more deserving. Before Doomsday, what do we know about the MCU Doctor Doom or his plans? We know that maybe he rules Latveria on Earth 828, but that's just speculation. For all we know, it's another Doom who lives on an entirely other Earth. Until confirmed, it's just speculation, even if it's heavily implied. As it was implied Thanos shared his comic motivations of wanting to win Death's favor in Avengers 1, but when Infinity War came along, this wasn't the case. So literally, all we know for sure about him going into Doomsday is that he's played by Robert Downey Jr., and that for some reason he was kneeling over and letting Franklin touch his face. That's frickin' it. Anything we learn about the MCU Doom will inevitably have to happen within the valuable screen time of Doomsday. His characterization, personality, motivations, level of threat, what his plans are relating to both the multiverse and the MCU, his relationship to Reed Richards, the Fantastic Four, Latveria, and the rest of the world, as well as other worlds in the multiverse, his level of knowledge of science and magic, his backstory of both how he learned his abilities as well as how he became a villain and developed his current motivations, and so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. And yeah, this shouldn't normally be a problem in a normal superhero movie. We don't know anything about most villains when the movie starts. Obadiah Stane, Red Skull, Loki, Ultron, Zemo, Killmonger, Mysterio, High Evolutionary, Sentry, all MCU villains of their respective movies that we first learned about in the movies they're in. And by the end, they're all memorable, and we know a lot about them and why they're such a threat to our heroes, as well as what they want to accomplish, what they believe in, and what they're like. But there's a difference with this movie specifically. With Obadiah Stane, we needed to also take time to focus on Tony Stark's journey to become Iron Man. With Killmonger, we needed time to focus on T'Challa's fall and then rise back up to being King of Wakanda. Even with Ultron and Zemo, we needed time to focus on all of the Avengers, as they either came together or fell apart, each for their own individual reasons. So these movies can be stuffed full, but they still have time to breathe anyways. With Doomsday, not only do we need to learn all about Doctor Doom, but we also need room for at least 27 other major characters from at least 3 separate universes to have their own individual characterizations, arcs, and cool moments, with it being very, very likely that there will be even more important characters that they haven't officially announced yet, as well as major cameos they want to keep as a surprise until the movie comes out. A good number of these characters are ones who haven't yet appeared in the MCU, so we'll need time to introduce and develop them. A large number of those characters come from movies most of the audience will have either not seen or just never became popular, meaning we'll have to spend time reminding people who they are or working to endear them to people. So introducing new characters, giving popular characters a spotlight to shine, while also giving less popular characters important moments to endear them to the audience, all the while also introducing and developing a multiverse-level threat in a way that satisfies audiences just coming to see the actor return, as well as justifies the $100 million he was paid to do so. And sure, say what you want about the Russos, but they do know how to pack a lot into a small package and give each character just enough of a moment to shine to be memorable. But that was always in movies where all of the pieces were in place before they even started. With this one, they don't have that. So what I worry we're going to be getting out of the Russos from either Doctor Doom or the rest of the cast is more like how Captain Marvel was portrayed in Infinity War, where her movie was still being shot, so they didn't really know anything about her personality or motivations, so she just walks in as a stoic cardboard cutout who talks tough, then flies in and gets punched out of the movie. Or worse, the characters will get the level of attention the Black Order got in Infinity War, where they are basically nothing but glorified henchmen with almost no characterization whatsoever. So my expectation going into this movie is that Doom will just be the main character, and we'll spend the next 3 hours watching him beat the shit out of minor heroes, while popular heroes from the past pop in and cameo for 2 seconds. And if I'm going to be honest, that does sound pretty fun, even if it's stupid as hell. But that is not the way I want to see Doctor Doom introduced to the MCU. And I know a lot of people agree with me. And though I hope for the best out of the character, for all these and many other reasons, I'm not expecting it. But what do you think? More red flags for Doctor Doom that I totally forgot? Disagree and think there's evidence that Doom is going to be friggin' awesome in this movie? Let me know below. I love reading your comments, and I hear it helps that whole algorithm thing. If you listened all the way through, thanks, man. I appreciate you sticking around for this obligatory subscription begging and rambling that comes after the actual video. Speaking of, let me beg you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, but pretend that I did it in a way that felt casual and friendly instead of desperate and rushed. Also, the bell button does something supposedly, so hit that too. I know this all sounds like doom and gloom, but I actually do still have hope for this movie. We'll see in a couple weeks, or already if you're watching this later, what the movie's gonna look like. I'm holding out on doing a red flags or maybe even a green flags for Doomsday until then, when I better know what it is that we're gonna be dealing with. Anywho, off I go to sit in front of the theater for the next few weeks to make sure I get into Avatar day one so I can watch that trailer and then immediately go home afterwards. See if I don't freeze to death. Bye.